Okay guys, so I'm going to run you through what you will need for this video. So first off, I've got some drying racks. I prefer the black one as it's close woven and I think has a more even distribution when the candles are setting. But I have my backup one in case I need the room. The reason I use these is rather than having the candle sit on a flat surface, is the heat doesn't transfer from the candle itself when drying and setting to a hard surface. So I think you get a more even drying distribution, if that makes sense. Your candle looks better and it stops it from sort of icing over, and I think, in my opinion, prolongs the burn time and the fragrance evency. So what I mean by that is your candle fragrance doesn't sit at the top of the candle. It dries evenly distributed throughout the candle. Therefore, even if you're 3/4 of the way through your candle, you still keep that beautiful scent. And one thing I have had customers say, and my product is now going into a hair salon requested by the owner. She's had my candles for 2 years now as a personal client, but she wants to stock them because she says they're the best candles she's ever had and they keep their scent the entire burn time. So that's really good review. So here you can see two of my pre-made, one of my mason jars and one of my 4-ounce tins. That is just to show what they look like afterwards. Normally on my mason jar I have some twine around it with one of my business cards, which I'll just grab, that I hole punch, and that looks really good. And on the back is just a little photo with details, just our email, where you can find us on Facebook, and phone number. So here I have my 3 mason jars, my scales. Now some people tell you to get a specific candle scale, but I just use my run-of-the-mill home scale. In Australia we generally use grams and kilograms, but for this recipe I use pounds. So as long as on the tar you can select pounds on your home scale, I would not invest in a new one. Another thing I have is my syringe. As you can tell, this one is really old, but it still does the job. And I just get a large 50 to 60 ml syringe. I got this one. You can get them from chemists. I actually got it from a pet warehouse. Yeah. But you can pick them up anywhere. They're really inexpensive, like 25 cents. And this one has lasted me forever. The only thing you'll notice is when you do the fragrance, if you spill it on the outside, it does tend to wear away the measurement. But look, as long as you can still get it pretty accurate, you're fine. I've started implementing a UV stabilizer. This is not at all necessary, and for the first 2 years I never used one, but because my candles are going to be stocked in a salon where there could be a lot of exposure to light, I've decided to use it just to stop, and I don't use any colours, I just have the natural soy wax 464, but just to stop any fading, crystallization over the top, or anything like that. Now my fragrance I actually make myself, so I cannot divulge what's in that to you, but I can definitely send you links to fragrances I have used in the past that are amazing and I can guarantee you clients will love. The next one is a thermometer. Now this one, I'll send you the link to where I got it from. I've used it for 2 years, never had an issue. As you can see, it's in Celsius and Fahrenheit, which I find really helpful. I go by Fahrenheit with my my recipe, but you can, if you find it easier, convert to Celsius. But again, as long as you get a really durable one, you should be fine. Another thing you'll need is paddle pop sticks with a little hole through them, and that's so that when the candle's setting, your wick is stays central in the middle. You don't want it off to the side. Another thing is I get the pre-made wicks with the bottoms. Now I get two different kinds. Two different lengths. So a short and a long. And because I'm a cheater and I want my wick to stay in place, I get these pre-made wick sticky dots that just, and I'll show you how they work later, but they just sit on the bottom, stick to the bottom, and then stick to the bottom of your jar or container. So as I was saying before, we need, if you can see this, little warning labels, just so in this day and age we don't get sued. And if you are using a UV stabilizer, just a measuring spoon. So I have got everything set up because I'm making a whole heap for the salon tomorrow. I've got 3 lots ready to go, so 3 pots with wax and a stirrer each. The last thing you need is a pot. I just use a run-of-the-mill one. You can buy them specially, but I actually bought one specially after using this one, and somehow it got a hole in it, and it was a proper candle pot. So in my advice, if you've got one of these ones, just use this, and you just fill it halfway with water. So I'm about to get started. Everything I do talk about will be in a PDF file and also in the description below, step by step. If you have any questions or queries, always feel free to comment below or inbox me. I'm more than happy to reply. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing we want to do is turn our oven on to approximately 70 degrees Celsius, or about 150 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Another thing you want to do is get a tray ready, and we put our mason jars, if you are using glass jars, on there, and these go in the oven to preheat just while we make up our candle formula. And what this does is, by having the jars warm already, it just stops any pulling from the sides of the jar and helps keep your candle nice and even overall with less damage. The next thing we want to do is add half a pot full of water, just enough that we can float our jug of wax, just so we can melt it and continue to stir it on the stove. So we'll pop that one on, and what I normally do is just pop the stove at a low setting to start with, at about 3 out of 9. So the formula that we are making today is using 1.5 pounds of wax, and what that will make is 1 500 country jar, so 500 mils, and 3 4-ounce containers. The 500 ml country jar will burn for approximately 20 to 40 hours, but more so up around that 40-hour mark. The 4-ounce tins will burn for approximately 10 to 20 hours, again more so up around that 20-hour mark, but it all depends on if you are lighting and burning them in a room with a draft, how long per burn time you're actually burning them for. So if you tend to burn your candles for a longer period of time all at once, you will burn through them quicker. So they're just little things that will factor into your burn time. So what we're going to do is pop our pot on our scales, turn the scales on or press tar, so that will zeroize the scales with the pot on, and then we want to weigh out our 1.5 pounds of wax. But if you are doing this for the first time, I really do persuade you just to do 0.5 pounds of wax, which will roughly get you 3 of the 4 ounce candle tins. The reason I say this is it can be a bit finicky, and the first time that you do it, smaller quantities are easier to work with, and then as your confidence and your skill set builds, you can do more at a time easier. So we'll weigh that out and then move on to our next step. Okay, now we've got our wax measured out, we're going to move it to our pot of hot water. So what I do, I anchor my handle of my pot of wax in this handle and leave my stirrer sitting in there. I also start to turn my stove up now. Obviously I don't want the water to boil over into the pot of wax because that will damage the consistency. But what I do want to do is get it to obviously heat up a little bit quicker than on temperature 3. Thermometer. So what we want to heat the wax to is 185 Fahrenheit. So what I do is I just pop it in just like that, just so it's not hitting the bottom of the pot of wax, and so I can still see when it rises. So we'll leave that one there for a few minutes. One key thing to make sure the consistency is right and that it doesn't change or pull apart or get too many air bubbles is that we don't want to over stir the wax. So we'll just leave that now until it's mostly melted, and then if any little bits need breaking up, we will do that. So while we're waiting for that, what we'll do is we'll come back over and start sticking the wicks in the containers. So the other thing I should have mentioned is when we put the mason jars in the oven, we don't want to put their wicks in prior to heating up, just because they actually melt in the oven because they are covered in a bit of wax themselves. So for our 3 little tins, we just want to get our 3 wicks, and I just like to make sure there's no big kinks in them. Get our little reel of wick stickers, peel them off, place as closely as in the centre of the wick as you can, pressing down. Remove the self-adhesive, and then it's just about trying to really get them nice and centre. So what I do is I actually place it down on a smooth surface, hold it over until I think it's pretty accurate, place it down just gently. So that one's a bit off, so I can still pull it up because I haven't pressed it down at all. And I just fiddle until I'm happy with it. I'm pretty happy with how that one is right now. So then I'll pop it down and really press so that self-adhesive sticks. So that one's nice and good. At the same time, I'll get my paddle pop stick. Make sure there's no little bits from where the hole was drilled into it. And I'll place that one over and just pop it up on my drying rack. And then I just continue with the others and just get them all ready, and then once they're done, I'll pop over and check on our wax. Another thing that I'll do while we're waiting, now I don't do this with the mason jars until the very end, is get my little warning stickers and just place in the middle of the bottom of the jar. That one is not in the middle and that will drive me insane. So I'll just turn it over and pretend like I don't know. And that's my ensemble of dogs going off their heads because it's that time of night and they want to be feral. So that's enjoyable, isn't it? If you hear my husband screaming at them, just ignore that. He definitely likes to tell them when they're being naughty. I swear sometimes that's the first words that'll come out of Frank's mouth. How he likes to yell at them when they're being naughty. So another thing I wanted to touch on while we're waiting for this wax to, excuse my messy kitchen, to heat up. Now that is starting to melt, but I'm going to just turn it up a fraction. So the other things, like I've said before, we want to avoid is, so to prevent imperfections on the surface of the soy wax candles, especially when we're using glass jars, is to preheat them in the oven just to a slightly warm temperature. That just stops any pulling away from the glass jar. It tries to stop the air bubbles, so we want to avoid over stirring. Pour at a slightly hotter temperature, so +5 degrees. We want to make sure that when the candles are setting, they're not in a really super hot warm room, that makes sense, in a really hot room, or again in a really cold room. Fluctuating temperatures will affect the outcome of your candles, and drafts will also affect it. Another thing is you want to pour the candles into the containers slowly. Okay guys, so as you can see, all the wax is melted and our heat is now at 185. So that's time to remove it from the heat. Now all I do, excuse me, is get my jug really carefully, just not to burn myself, and pop it on the stove. Now what we're going to do is we're going to leave this to cool until 130. Okay guys, so I've just removed it from the heat. We just got it off at 185 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 85 degrees Celsius. So now what we're going to do is add in our UV stabilizer, if you are going to add it in. And so how we do this is it's 1 teaspoon per pound of wax. So I have 1.5 pounds of wax. So I'm going to add in 1.5 teaspoons. So I've got half a teaspoon measuring spoon here. So I'm going to add in 3 of those and then stir gently. Now, as I said, you don't have to add this. If you use colour candles, it's strongly advised, but because my candles are going to possibly be exposed to a fair bit of sunlight, I'm just going to add it as a precautionary. And again, I don't want to create too many air bubbles, so I'm just going to really gently stir in. And then what we're going to do is leave the wax to cool to 135 degrees. Okay guys, so our mixture is now at 135 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm just going to take my thermometer off the sink. Now, with the fragrance that I've made, I put in 26 mils, well 10% of 0.5 pounds. So because I've made 1.5 pounds in this in this jug, I'm going to put in roughly 78 mils of my fragrance. So what I'm going to do is just fill up to the 50 ml line. Sorry, my hand's in the road. And just let that go in to my jug of wax. Now back before I did it this way, when I was starting out, I would measure to the exact with the syringe drawer, but now I just estimate because I've been doing it so much. The one I'm making at the moment literally smells like Peter's vanilla ice cream if you've ever had it. And now I'm just going to go 28 mils. Now you don't have to move this around as you do it. I just do it because, I don't know, I just do. I'll just wash that quickly. Now, all I'm going to do is just gently stir so that the fragrance is mixed really well. Again, you don't want to over stir because we don't want to create any of those excessive air bubbles, and then that will hinder the overall look of the candle once it's poured and set, because I'm being a bit lazy. So I'm just going to set that down and make sure that my wick is centre, which it looks pretty good. On to the next one. And popping that onto dry. Making sure it's as far in the centre as it can be. Awesome. Now, lastly, Lastly, got to get my jar out of the oven. Remove my sticker tab. And try and get this as centered as possible. That looks pretty good. And then I just use a paddle pop stick to try and press the wick sticker down on the bottom. And then pop it over the top. Give it another slight stir. It's just been sitting. And then gently pour into my container. I just saw an air bubble, it's circulating, it's really doing my head in. And another. I've got a tiny bit left, so I'm just gonna top up. These three. Actually, I probably can't get that in one. So with this one, can I see any air bubbles? No, but that doesn't mean that there's not any in there. But what I'll do is now just pull on that wick gently. Make sure it's as centre as I can get it. Gently move it to our drying rack. That looks pretty good. All right. Now just to show you progression, this is the first one I poured tonight. They've all been poured about 45 minutes apart. Same with the back ones. Obviously they're setting quicker as they're smaller volume, but that's what it looks like right now.